a moment months in the making for just the fourth time in U.S. history.
The House Committee on the Judiciary is introducing 2 articles of impeachment charging the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, with committing high crimes and misdemeanors.
The first article, introduced by House Democrats, abuse of power, charging the president with dangling a White House meeting and military aid money to Ukraine in exchange for its leaders publicly announcing investigations that would benefit his re-election. The second article, obstruction of Congress, for blocking testimony from key administration officials in what Democrats describe as unprecedented, categorical, and indiscriminate defiance. They say the time to act is now.
If we did not hold him accountable, he would continue to undermine our election.
President Trump defending himself late tonight. Do you believe that your impeachment is inevitable, sir?
Well, I think the Democrats, I can't imagine they vote for it because we did nothing wrong. I think it's a disgrace that people can make impeachment out of nothing. That was a perfect conversation.
The president's allies argue the Democrats' case is based on hearsay.
When you have abuse of power, which is an amorphous topic that can be anything they want it to be, there's just wafer thin evidence for this.
Speaker Pelosi, Adam Schiff, and her counterparts have been abusing the power of impeachment because they're afraid Donald Trump will get reelected on his own.
Today's announcement sets up a House vote to impeach the president as soon as next week. And with Democrats in the majority, it's expected to pass along party lines. But that does not mean the president would be removed from his job. 2/3 of senators would have to approve that after a trial next month. And with supportive Republicans in control there, the president's almost certain to stay in office.
And so, Hallie, we saw one of those split-screen moments today. Democrats delivering articles of impeachment just minutes before delivering the president a big victory on the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement. Why today?
Well, Lester, Speaker Pelosi says the timing you reference is not a coincidence, as she now undercuts the president's argument Democrats are doing nothing but impeachment. So it's a win for her and for President Trump, even as he accuses Democrats of doing this deal on the replacement for NAFTA out of embarrassment, he says, over impeachment.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here. And click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.